Is he good? Is he faithful? Have you seen him work in your family? Glory to God. Grab a seat here this morning. We are so excited that you're joining us here today. If you're here in the room, welcome out. Also want to welcome out our friends that are joining us on demand at Sea Life Online right now, and our friends over at Kaufman County Detention Center. We are thrilled that you're joining us here today for week 4 of Bad Words. Hey, this has been a good one for anybody in here this morning. This series has been so valuable to me in my personal life. When we started it, I thought that this was just going to be about our words. I thought this was a series about our speech. I thought I've got a lot of cleaning up to do, but no, this was actually a series about our hearts. Jesus said it best, right? He said, from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. You know, so if you've got an issue with telling a little white lie when you get in contact with your friends, you're on vacation, you know, you got to one-up your friends along the way with different stories, you got a little dishonesty floating around in your heart. If you got hateful, poisonous speech, you know, you might have a little bitterness floating around in your heart. So I think this one is going to be very valuable, very challenging. We're going to have a good time here today. We're going to be talking about anger here this morning. Yeah, anger. Hey, come on, where are my hotheads at in the room? Come on, we know you got a temper. You don't got to hide it. Your whole family knows you got a temper, all right, buddy? Yeah, if you're watching online, go ahead and throw a flame emoji in the chat. Yeah. We know, okay? You don't got to even tell us. Yeah, you know, I think back to several moments along the way when I've used my words as a weapon. I asked my wife last night, I was like, can you think of something, like, can you think of just, like, the most damaging thing that I've ever said? Is there something that you go back to in your mind? And she's like, honestly, it's tough to choose. I was like, that many, huh? Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, give me one. I'll share it with the church. Just make sure it's like PG or something. She was like, well, how about 2013? I was like, what happened then? This makes me nervous. She was like, you know, the gender reveal. I was like, oh, give me a break. Okay, so let me tell you, we're on a drive. We had just found out that we were having a baby. We were pregnant with our firstborn, Emery Nicole. And Megan is so excited. You know, first baby, it's a big deal. This is a joyous occasion. But I mean, I don't want to put a damper on anything. This is like a wet blanket here. I don't mean to, but I'm over the gender reveal, people. I'm over it. I've seen too many. I've seen them go wrong, right? And you know, sometimes they're not even right. You know, you find out in the delivery room, it's a totally different gender, right? So anyway, I was like, let's just be safe. Let's just not even do it. And she was like, Jeremy, that's not any fun at all. And she was planning this whole big thing. She got in touch with her family members, all that. And so we go to the doctor. We find out the gender, find out we're having a little girl. And listen, the only thing that was pulling me through having this first child was that I was going to have a son, right? I was going to have a football player. We were going to play sports, you know, inappropriate jokes, all the things. It was going to be awesome. And then I found out we were having a girl, and how do you raise a girl? I have no idea. You know, I didn't have a sister growing up. So we're on the drive back, and Megan is you can just see she's glowing. She's found a partner in crime. We're having a little girl. And my mom ends up calling. The phone starts ringing, and it's reflex. I'm not proud of it. I'm sorry. I grabbed the phone, I put it to my ear, and I said, it's a girl. Hope you're happy. And I throw it, and I just hang up. Megan looks at me. I'm surprised we're married, to be honest. I'm surprised she didn't leave after that. Yeah, and you know what? When you talk about it, your angry words in relation to like a gender reveal or something, like it can be a little bit of a funny story, but when you think about the damage that you've done along the way when it comes to the people that are closest to you in life, isn't this true? You can be angry with people at the store, or you can be angry with circumstances, but for me, I reserve my most ruthless anger for the people that are closest to me. Does anybody else relate to this? It's like at work, I can be Pastor Jeremy. I can put the hat on. I can wear the kindness for a little bit, right? Go to the store. I can put the face on. Hanging around extended family. You're pushing it, right? Like, it may come out. You get around the in-laws, it's like, yeah. But when it comes to the people that are closest to me, you know, it seems like my wife, my kids, my best friends, they're the ones that really wear the wounds in this relationship, right? They're the ones that have to deal with anger when it comes out. Now, you know, when I say anger, there's so many of us that are like, you know, I don't know if that applies to me. This is just who I am. Like, I'm a truth teller. Like, isn't that true? When you encounter somebody that's got a temper, They love to put it out and say, I don't have a filter, okay? That's just how it is. And you wear it like a badge of honor a little bit. And what I hear when people say things like that, like I'm just bold and beautiful, I just say it how it needs to be said. What I hear when people say that is that either you've tried to change this glaring weakness in your life that everybody around you, I promise, is painfully aware that you have. Like in order to do relationship with you, people have to have an emotional callus. They got to armor up, They're aware of that. I hear that you're either unwilling to change that, or I hear from you that like you've tried to change it and you've just kind of settled into this zone that's like, my dad was this way, my mom was this way. The way I watched my parents fight growing up, I only know how to be nuclear. That's just who I am, right? And you just kind of resolve yourself to staying in this captivity, to staying angry. There's no change. You couldn't change. It's not quite possible. Those are the things that I hear when people tell me that they deal with anger and they're kind of, they've resigned themselves to it some. But there is another sneaky faction of you that's out there that maybe you're not explosive when it comes to your anger, but you're more passive with it, right? There's two kinds of people. We end up marrying each other. It's kind of interesting. There are the spewers, right? When there's a problem, it's volcanic and it's coming out. Like the lava is gonna hit you. There's the spewers and then there's the stewers, right? And you're just stewing it, you're saving it, until the perfect moment, right? And you let them have it. You're just, that nuclear reactor is building the uranium fusion situation and you're just ready to just go nuclear on somebody. It's funny how these two groups get together. You got your spewers and you got your stewers. And a lot of times the people that are stewers would say, no, I don't have an anger issue, but make no mistake, that is anger. It looks different. Maybe you use sarcasm. We got some sarcastic people in the room. Maybe you use sarcasm. Maybe it's a cold shoulder. Maybe you remove yourself emotionally from people, create some distance so that they feel the lack of your presence. Make no mistake, you may not struggle with like just erupting on people, but that is still anger. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of at a point in my life where the people that are closest to me, I'm tired of them having to pay the price for this, right? Like I'm tired of them having to be the ones that have to, again, emotionally callous up to deal with my temper, to deal with my personality. Seems like the ones that I love the most are the ones that have to bear the brunt. And if that's you this morning, if you're tired of anger dominating your life or temper being your default response, I think that this is really going to challenge you here today, and we're going to have a good time learning along the way. Listen, it's not just motivational mumbo jumbo that we're talking through. I got scriptures, people. I hope you're ready to look at the Bible here this morning. This is Galatians chapter 5. It says this: the acts of the flesh, they're obvious. So let's stop right there. Think about this. The acts of the flesh. So this is you at your most natural, all right? This is just the way you respond. Ready? Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord. You lean into these things like jealousy, things like, ready? Fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. That's the bad. That's what our flesh naturally moves towards. But if you are a believer in Jesus Christ and you have the redemptive work of the Spirit in your life, you're not playing by the same set of rules. In fact, the Bible says this: if you have the Spirit in your life, there is a different result. There's a different fruit that comes from your life. It says this: the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance. That's like patience or long-suffering. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You may be given to fits of rage in the flesh. You may give in to a little bit of sarcasm in the flesh. You may be given to cold shoulder, harboring these sorts of things, waiting to unleash your anger, or erupting on people. That may be a default response for you in your flesh. But when you are walking in the Spirit, you don't play by those rules anymore. You live at a different address now. You're no longer captive to the desires of the flesh, the responses of the flesh, but you have a new person you're trying to please. You're not just trying to gratify what's going on within you, but you're free from that to please Jesus Christ and to live through the power of the Spirit. See, look at what it says continued in Galatians 5. It says, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. You see this? It's like you nailed this down. That thing was dead. You don't got to keep going back to that response. You don't got to keep going with that temper. You can live with a little bit of self-control. In fact, one last verse here from the book of 2 Timothy. Look at what the Spirit gives us. It says, God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. You don't got to lose it. But there's another option here. Now, I know that that's probably not helpful if you've got a temper, if you've got a hot head. I understand it. When I read stuff like that, I'm like, all right, help me here, because I feel a little, anybody else just feel kind of resigned to it? It's just like, this is just who I am sometimes. You know, it's interesting because I've repeated that line to myself over and over. I don't think anger is a chief issue for me, but it is, when it does come out, I do often blame it on, well, that's just kind of who I am. And I've told myself that over and over, and when I examine that I don't think that's the truth. I think that is a lie, a falsehood that I started to believe along the way, and it ended up making it a little bit easier for me to settle in to the coffin of my natural disposition. Let me illustrate it like this. So years ago, Emery, she had a little, like a crib, and we were moving her to a big girl bed. It was kind of right in that transitional phase. Parents, do you remember this? Bittersweet time, right? End of an era. She used to do this thing. I mean, it was precious. It'd be 4:30, 5 in the morning, and I would hear, did you sense the sarcasm when I said precious? Yeah. It was like 4:30, 5 in the morning, and I would hear this, Mommy, Daddy. And so I'd open my eyes wide-eyed, and I'd have to go in her room, and I'd reach down in her crib because she's trapped behind the bars of a crib. You know, it's like a prison cell for kids. She'd be in there, and she would just be hanging on to these bars, and I would have to lift her out, and I'd put her on the floor, and then she'd start the tornado, right? This kid, she's like the Tasmanian devil. She goes to tearing everything up in the house and cooking a makeshift breakfast and starting the car and doing all these weird things around the house. So she's just a tornado, you know, and I felt a little cautious, like, I didn't want to move Emery out of the crib into the big girl bed. I mean, I respect what Megan was saying, but, you know, there's some danger here. If she's on the loose, there's some bad things that could happen. You know, all I could picture in my mind was, like, do you remember in Jurassic Park when the velociraptors learned to open doors? Do you remember this? Like, I could just see that little creature coming out of her bed and opening the door, and then who knows what's happening, right? Like, and not to mention, like, let the kid be a kid a little. Like, I'm not in any rush for her to grow up. I was telling Megan, I'm like, let her stay in the crib. And Megan's like, Jeremy, she's 8 years old. It's time, you know? No, she wasn't that old. But I was, you know, I just, okay, fine. End of an era. I'm fine with it. It's okay. Give it a shot. And so we put her big girl bed together. We lay her down, kiss her goodnight. And I just felt this latent anxiety. Like, parents, you remember this night? You remember the first night in the big kid bed? So I went to sleep that night. And about 4:30 or 5 in the morning, you know what I heard? Mommy! Daddy! And I go over to Emery's room, and I'm like, I'm just waiting to see the carnage that has been unleashed in this place. And I opened the door and couldn't believe it. Lying in her bed, stiff as a board, Emery Nicole Fisher. She looks over at me and she smiles as soon as I walk in. And then it dawned on me, she still thinks she's trapped. Like, she thinks she's a prisoner. There's no walls on the big kid bed. Like, she's free to go. It's a green light, you know? She can, there's nobody holding her back except for this false thought that's in her mind. Do you see this? You know, this is so interesting because I think every single one of us that deals with this sort of anger, when you've resigned yourself to this is just who I am. When that is just a thing that you've believed, that's a lie. Like, call a spade a spade. The way the scriptures read is that change is possible. The change is not just possible, it is expected when you are in step with Jesus Christ in the Spirit. Like, instead, we have put ourselves in this prison without bars, believing that this is just who I am. Like, I've always been a hothead. Dad was a hothead. Mom had a temper. Grew up in a family where fights were just nuclear. This is just me. That's a lie. And confronting lies with the truth, listen to this, as a believer, this is the most basic form of spiritual warfare. I don't mean to dramatize that or anything. I know, like, when I think about spiritual warfare, I think about Linda Blair and head turning around and blah, you know, I think about The Exorcist, like angels, demons. But if you think about it, this is the most basic form of spiritual warfare, confronting lies with the truth. You remember that moment in the garden when the serpent shows up to tempt Eve? Do you remember what his weapon was? Is this not eye-opening? Do you remember what he came armed with? It wasn't an AK-47. It wasn't an RPG. He didn't have a Glock 9, nothing like that. The serpent shows up, and his weapon is his mouth. He's armed with a lie. And he knows if he can convince Eve of something that is not the truth, who knows what the damage will be? I'm telling you here this morning, confronting this lie here may have massive implications on your life here. People, I'm telling you, big doors swing on little hinges here. If you figure this out, think about the ways that your marriage could be different. Think about the ways that your friendships could be different. Think about the way your relationship with your kids could be different if you just figure this out. A confrontation with Jesus Christ will reveal, like, that this whole time you've been locking yourselves in a cage of your own devices. Jesus says it like this. He says, you will know the truth, and the truth will what? It'll set you free. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You know, if you've dealt with this your entire life, I've got great news for you this morning, is that this could be the very first day of a brand new life for you. Jesus has a big plan on what it looks like for us to harbor anger and use anger and have anger a part of our life. You know, the way that I've always been taught that anger was a bad thing. In fact, just show of hands here. Who here thinks anger is a bad thing? Like, anger is just not good, right? There's a ton of us. Like, I was taught my whole life that anger is something that you push away. You don't want to be angry. You want to be kind. Anger is just that's, you don't want to ever get to the point where you're angry. Stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down. And it's interesting because anger in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's not a sinful thing. You say, Jeremy, how do you know that? You know, think about it. Within the scriptures, the Bible tells us that even God got angry. There are scriptures that tell us even Jesus got angry. Now, is that surprising to anybody else? When I think about Jesus, I think about the guy with hair like Brooke Shields from the 80s, and he's holding the lamb and so gentle, but no, Jesus gives us a much fuller picture of what it looks like to use our emotions, not just this passive man here, but no, Jesus got angry. It says I believe in Mark 3, it says that Jesus was angry when he looked at the Pharisees and was grieved at the hardness of their heart. You know, he looks at the people around him and he sees that their hearts are hard. Jesus gets angry. Again, in the scriptures, it tells us that God along the way gets angry. This is what this is telling me. If Jesus is perfect and good, if God is trustworthy and holy, this tells me that anger is not a bad or a sinful thing, but anger might just be the correct response to certain situations. Anger might just be something that could be redeemed, something good, something holy and righteous. That is so counterintuitive for me. I've never quite thought about it like that. In fact, the Apostle Paul, he says it like this. This is out of Ephesians. He says, be angry and do not sin. Be angry. That's an imperative. That's a commandment. He says, be angry, but the trick is, in your anger, do not sin. See, the Bible doesn't teach us to annihilate our emotions. Like that's Buddhism. Buddhism says, do away with your emotions, be done with that, you just want to be Zen. The Bible instead says that your emotions can be redeemed, that God can take any situation and he can use it for good and make holiness out of it here. Anger in and of itself is not a sinful thing, but anger, when it is harnessed and anger is used in its right place, anger can lead to change. Anger can lead to whole communities and generations changing. But the trick is here is that it's got to be anger and not mixed in with a little bit of sin. It's got to be harnessed and put in the exact right place. James 1:19-20 says this, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." You know, anger, when used rightly, it should spur you into action. I'm telling you, there are some things out there that should make you angry. Like, it should not be okay with your soul. When I think about the children who will go to bed tonight not knowing who their father is, because of my personal circumstances growing up, that wells up in anger in me. You know, when I think about the children who are neurologically divergent, who are picked on at school because of our circumstances, it wells up anger in me. It makes me want to change things. You know, I think about the way that the church can be asleep, just won't realize the needs that are around them sometimes. That can make me angry some days. And as a result, it has been the thing that has propelled me towards change. Like, the whole reason I got into 10 years worth of youth ministry is because of that ache that I had in my own life for fatherhood. I didn't want any other child to have to go through that sort of thing. Wanted them to think that there was at least one other person in this world that cared for them. Anger, when harnessed, can be a good thing. But when anger is out of control, man, I think we've all seen how damaging that can be. James says this, he says one more time, he says, "My beloved brothers, every person, you need to be quick to hear and slow to speak, slow to anger, because the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." See, there's a difference. There's a difference between the anger of man and holy, righteous indignation. Like, for us, when we get angry, it's usually because our ego got bruised, or we're embarrassed, we're found out. You know, those are the reasons why we get angry a lot of times. Proverbs says this, it says, "Fools give full vent to their anger, but the wise quietly hold it back." That's Proverbs 29. Fools give full vent to their anger, but the wise quietly hold it back. Now, little thing, you see, you guys didn't know this about me. Let me brag for a second, okay? So, in my house, I'm like Iron Chef, okay? I call myself Iron Fish. I have this grill set up outside. I love to grill. I'm a grilling machine. And listen, I know y'all got your fancy pellet grills, okay? Knock yourself out with your Traeger. Sorry, I offended somebody. We're gonna pray afterwards for you, all right? I've got a Kamado grill. Does anybody know what that is here? Anybody online know what a Kamado grill is? Okay, so it's like an egg, all right? It's like a big egg, and it functions like an oven. So you can bake, you can smoke on it, you can grill. It does it all. You know, it's awesome. By the way, Kamado Joe and Big Green Egg, if you're watching this, I'd love the royalties for this free advertisement here. So I've got this egg grill at my house, and I told the lady last night, I told Megan, I was like, "Hey, listen, kick your feet up tonight. First put the kids down, but then kick your feet up. I'm gonna cook dinner tonight." And she said, "Ooh, Iron Fish, what will you cook for us?" She doesn't have that accent, but I wish she did. "Ooh, Iron Fish, tell me more." And I said, "I'm going to cook you some succulent grilled chicken." And so I go to the backyard and I fire up the grill. Now, the way these grills work, I don't know if you know anything about a Kamado grill. Maybe you've got a Weber little charcoal grill at the house. It's kind of similar. So the way that it works is you got two vents. You got a vent on the top, vent on the bottom, right? And the vent on the bottom on my grill, that brings in lots of airflow, okay? You open that thing wide open. They tell you on these grills that you don't want to open it too far because it's really easy to raise the temperature. and it's really hard to bring it back down. And so it's got a little daisy wheel on the top there that you can open up and let a little more airflow if you need to. So there I am. Literally, this is last night, people. The Iron Fish is in the backyard. I've got the patio set up. I've got the music going, right? And I'm grilling the chicken back there, and I open the vent because it's time to sear the chicken. And so I'm going to sear it real quick, right? And so I open the grill, but then somebody, I don't know who it was, I don't know, Zeke or somebody in the back, they hollered for me and distracted me. So I ran inside for what was not more than 30 seconds. It was definitely not more than 30 minutes. And I can tell you it was certainly not more than an hour, okay? But when I went back outside, it was my goodness, it was a fireball when I walked in the backyard last night. And so I can hear Megan from inside, and she's like, "How's the dinner look?" And I just hollered back, I said, "We're having blackened chicken. You're gonna love it." So Iron Fish did not deliver last night. Still have an angry household right now. So, but point is, what I'm trying to communicate here in a long roundabout way. These grills, when you open them up at the top, you go full vent here. It just goes, it scorches whatever you've got on the inside there. And the truth is like, that's fire, right? That's the way fire works. You give fire space, and fire does its thing. Like, you give fire lots of air, and it does its thing. But 15 times in the scriptures, the Bible associates anger with fire. It might be over 15 times. Isn't this interesting? Now, let me ask you this. Fire, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Wow, not confident here at the Forney campus. Online, I hope you're smarter than these, Kurt. No. Yeah, fire, is it a good or a bad thing? It depends, right? Yeah, it depends. I think we've all seen fire in a good situation. Like, fire, when it is contained and it is harnessed, can power your home. It can heat your dinner up. Maybe too much sometimes. It can heat your dinner up. It can heat your household, right? You can turn a fire on in the fireplace and go snuggle up with your lady and like, fire's a good thing. Fire's a beautiful thing. But fire out of the right context, right? Fire is destructive. Make a mess of things. It will not aid life, it will take life. Fire can be destructive when it's not harnessed properly. And if you think about it, this is what anger is. Like, anger, it's a change agent. It should drive us towards something, but it has to be harnessed. Jesus is the perfect example for anger. There's so many instances within the scripture when Jesus, he's the model for this thing here. When Jesus gets angry, Jesus, he's never lashing out at folks. He's never berating people. He's never cutting people down here. He's speaking the truth, and he's doing it deliberately and measuredly. There's a moment when Jesus heals this blind man, and afterwards the Pharisees come, and they're talking about whether or not this man could have been healed on the Sabbath, and it says that Jesus got angry, and his anger was because of the love of this man. The Pharisees had elevated Mosaic law over the care of this man, Mosaic tradition here over the care of a person. Another instance, do you remember the story? I think Matthew 21 maybe. Do you remember when Jesus puts a whip together and he goes into the temple and he's just flipping tables and cracking that whip? Do you remember this? He's driving the money changers out and he's flipping tables and whatnot. And Jesus, again, he's the model for it. I'm not telling, by the way, this is not permission for you to put a whip together and go to work tomorrow and let everybody have it, okay? You have neither the wisdom nor the restraint of Jesus. I'm just merely telling you that moments after that, after Jesus cracked the whip, and this is so telling, moments after, there are children singing his praises, and the most vulnerable are coming to him for healing. Is that what it's like when you get angry? Because if I had to guess, when you get angry, it's volcanic and people run. People want to be away from you as fast as possible. But when Jesus delivers his righteous indignation, it's perfect, it's holy, and it's an agent of change. And so what's the advice, right? What do you do with this? Just, I get it. Jesus is the model for this, but give me some handlebars here, Jeremy. What we're going to do, I just want to leave you with 4 things very quickly as we kind of start to land the plane a little. 4 things here. We'll start very practically, and then we'll get to kind of the spiritual matters here, because I know just saying be self-controlled, that's useless when you're the kind of person that, if you're anything like me, I just can pop off sometimes, and I can store it, and then I explode some days. So what do? I encourage you, write this down. Put this in your phone. Jot this in your notes online. Write this down. Number 1, identify the source of your anger. Identify the source of your anger. St. Augustine said that our emotions are like smoke from a fire. So like anytime you smell smoke in your house, it's never wise for you to just be like, it's probably nothing, right? You want to investigate what that's about. And anger, I've learned, you'll hear several counselors say this, anger is like a secondary emotion. Anger is your response to what it is that you're actually feeling. Do you see this? So, for instance here, I'll give you a little story here. We've got this vehicle in our household, Chevy Traverse. You may love your Chevy. Our Chevy, we call it the cursed Traverse in our house because she loves to break down. That's her biggest hobby, is she loves to break down. And so I've taken the cursed Traverse to 3 different mechanics along the way, and every time I go, we'll stop at mechanic number 1, and he's like, yeah, figured it out. It's only going to cost you $500, but it's going to drive fine after this. And so we pay $500, drive it home, breaks down in the driveway the next day. And so I took it to the second mechanic, and I get over there, have the car towed there. Mechanic's like, oh, it's going to cost you $1,600, no big deal. You're going to be fine. Car drives great now, and so I pay the money, and I drive it back to my house. And the next day, cursed Traverse, she's dead. So I have it towed one more time to a dealership in Rockwall. This was last Sunday. And I get a call from the dealership in Rockwall, and they're like, hey, the car is finished. It's only going to cost you $900. Listen, it drives great. And before they finished, I was like, listen to me. I want you to drive that car 100 miles. I want you to drive it around, keep it for a couple days, and you tell me that it drives great. And so they did that. They obliged. They kept it. They drove it around. They called me back. They're like, car drives great. Well, money, let's go. So I drive to Rockwall. I pick the car up, and I put the kids in the back, and we're driving home. And as we're on the road towards Forney, I stop at a stoplight, and there's a woman that's in front of us who, I don't know if she's texting or emailing or what, but she's not paying attention to the light, and it goes from the red light to a green light. And so I just give her a little, just a quick little beep, and she starts doing all that. She told me I was number 1. Like, I was like, that's strange. And then she drives off. And so she drives off, and I go a little ways down, and I'm, again, continuing towards our house when I pull up to another stoplight, and she's there again. She's right in front of us. And so I pull up, hi, and she's, I don't know what she's doing. She's not paying attention again. And so I give her another little, like I give her a few this time, all right? Well, this time, she just, all the hand motions and gang signs, and she's just throwing all these things out. And I'm like, what in the world? So she drives off. Well, it gets under my skin. I've had enough. I'm thinking about the car. I've been through this whole saga here. I'm just trying to get home. I just start yelling. My kids are in the back seat. I start losing my mind. And Emery, my oldest, she goes, Dad, you are so mad at her. You are so mad at her. When I think about it, I was driving home and I had some time to stew on this. And no, I wasn't. I was not mad at her. I'll tell you what I was nervous that this car was going to turn into a fireball. Like every time we pulled up to a stop sign, or every time we pulled up to a light, I was nervous it was going to break down. I wasn't angry at her. I felt used and silly because I'd been to 3 different mechanics, and I felt like I'd been taken advantage of. I felt embarrassed because I'm a guy and I don't know how to fix my own car. I was feeling all these things, but my response, the way that it came out, are you seeing this? It manifested in anger. There was something else going on. I was feeling a ton of different emotions, and the way that I responded to it was anger. This is so helpful for those of you that might have a spouse in your relationship who deals with this kind of anger. It's never that they just fly off the handle because they think it's fun. There's something going on underneath that they might not even be able to articulate, but there's more to it than just, I like being mad. You need to identify what the source of your anger truly is. Secondly, identify when you're losing control. We got to hurry through these. Your pulse is going to tell you. Your heartbeat's going to tell you. Your body is going to let you know when you're losing control. This is so helpful. I learned this from Casey and Lauren Coates. When they get into cage match arguments, Casey is so good about saying, hey, I need 24 hours to just sit on this for a little bit before I can have a productive conversation. We've adopted that in our own marriage. And it's so helpful for us when we start feeling like we're seeing red. It's so good to just, let's take a breather, let's take a pause. That way we can be at our best when we come back to this and we're not just seeing red here. Experienced this morning. We're leaving on vacation here today. And so we got all packed up last night. And when I walked out to the car this morning, somebody had broke into our car last night. Yeah, O is right. And when I saw it, I felt my pulse, felt my heart, my breathing started to change. I had been praying that God would help me relate to this message, but I didn't know it was going to come in this form. And I felt it was not a righteous indignation, okay? It was hatred. I felt so angry, and I could feel myself losing it this morning a little bit. And so I told Megan, I told my wife, I was like, I can't even survey the damage. I don't even know what's stolen from all our vehicles. I've got to get to campus, and I got to protect my mind and heart before I preach the word here this morning. Just a necessary thing for you to be able to dip and just say, okay, I don't know if I can fight fair right now. This will be so helpful for you within your marriage. So 2 practical steps, and let's lean into the spiritual a little bit here as we close. You know, it's easy to kind of write your list. I'd say the hardest part of all of this is when you blow it, though, right? When you make a mistake, when it comes to your anger. It's repenting. You know, all of us are going to make mistakes here. And the way that the Bible puts it, I love this. James says, if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man. That's not any one of us here. We're all imperfect. We're all going to mess this up. And so the natural next step as a believer in Jesus, after you've messed up when it comes to your language, is to repent after you've blown it. You've got an opportunity to step in and do some work here. You know, for me, there is, I debated on whether or not I was even going to share this. I went for it last service, and I thought, I'm cutting that out of the second one. You know, this is without a doubt the hardest part of dealing with your words after you've wounded the person that is closest to you, somebody that you love, right? So Zeke, my middle child, he plays football over at, he plays in an upwards league at First Baptist. And Zeke, he's neurologically divergent. He's a little different than other kids, but we've always determined that we're going to treat him just like any other kid. We put him in sports and let him do his thing. And so Zeke is surprised a couple years ago when the kid's an athlete. Kid can move. And just like his dad, I was really proud. No. You guys know that we talked about lying in week 1, right? Yeah. So Zeke has proven to be a pretty good athlete. And so there we are. We're at final game of the season. And coach runs over to me, and Zeke's team is leading a drive, and Zeke is about to carry the ball. So coach comes over to me, and he's like, hey, we're gonna give the bulldozer the rock on the final push. I was like, let's do it. Come on. So I get my camera ready, and I'm on the sidelines, and I'm ready to watch Zeke punch it in. And Zeke looks over at me, and he gives me a thumbs up, like, proud dad, man, here we go. And the ball is snapped, and Zeke grabs the ball, and he just runs like the wind in the opposite direction, the wrong way. Like he starts running the wrong way. He starts the other end zone, and I'm chasing him down the sidelines, and I'm like, go, no. And I'm trying to tell him, and the whole time he's just running, and he's just so proud. He's the proudest kid that's ever lived, And he gets to that opposite end zone, and he spikes the ball, then he puts his hands up in the air, and people, I lost it. We're laughing right now, but I'm telling you, afterwards, they were like, is that guy a pastor? I was like, yeah, at Lake Point. He's awful. Man. I'm making a joke out of this, guys, but we got to come back. It was a bad moment. I'm legit not proud of this. It's awful. Megan, she calls me shortly after. It was probably a week later, and she said, hey, Zeke did an assignment at school. Once you brace yourself, it's going to hurt. And so I get home, and Zeke wrote me, or he wrote a book. I don't think it was supposed to go to me. But you don't even need to see, you don't even see the words on it. You can tell what my words have done. This is a book Zeke wrote for Dad. And you can see this is us playing football. This is Dad cheering him on. But things take a turn pretty quickly, and you can see the disappointment. And I asked him after, like, can you see even the crook on his neck? Like, how a child can illustrate this. I mean, the words here, it's written in Klingon. I don't know what it says, but I asked him afterwards, I said, what are the bumps on Daddy's arm? And from the mouths of babes, he said, when you get mad, it's when your muscles come out. And that from the perception of those that you love, like, you're just burning them down. You're angry. You're like the things you say that cut so deep. And I'm watching the damage I have done to the one that I love the most. That night I get in Zeke's room and we sit down and we try to pray together every night. And that night I could not even put the words to it. I couldn't, like, it was sounds that were coming out of my mouth because I was just crying. I was just sobbing because I felt like this could very well be something that he permanently carries for the rest of his life. This could be one of those lingering memories. This could be one of those keystone things that he harbors with him for the rest of his life. And it comes down to my choice of words. Like, I don't even know in that moment, like, I was losing it, but it's just a football game. Like, what is it why would I need to react like that? Why is it that was my default response here? That night, I just sat at his bedside and I wept and I asked for his forgiveness. And I don't even think he fully was aware of what it is that Dad was asking for, what Dad was saying. But I think he sensed what was going on. For every one of you that struggles in the room, same way I do, just containing, restraining, putting a lid on, I want you to consider a moment the death that you are bringing to those that you love. Like that night, I'm kneeling at his bedside and I just keep thinking, shame on me, shame on me. How did I do this? You know, that's the half we focus on is the death that we bring with our words. We love to quote this verse, right? We love to say that the power of the tongue can bring death or life. And I really want to focus on that last half there as we're wrapping up here. Power of the tongue is to bring death and life. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Sure, you can bring death, but believer, listen to me. You can bring life. You could bring such beauty and restoration to your household by the way that you speak, by the forgiveness that you offer, by the tenderness that you give. Isn't it possible that the ground that you've burned along the way could actually be the seed bed for something really beautiful to grow? You know, it's not possible in our own effort, and this is the last thing I'd have you write down here. After you've repented, seek divine help. Invite God into this one here. I'm kneeling at Zeke's bedside and I'm like, Bubba, listen to me. Daddy is working on this. Daddy's growing in this here, but it's not just Daddy's efforts here. God is working on Daddy. You have my promise right now that God is not going to leave me the same, that God is going to speak through me, that God's going to make this right, that God's going to use me, God's going to restore me, God's going to redeem this, and He can do the same thing for you. Like, your words don't have to be what they've always been. You don't always have to lean into the temper. You don't always have to lean into the rage. You don't always have to lean into what you've always leaned into. But with God's help, I know that God could restore what we've burned down. So right now, around this room, would you bow your heads with me? Jesus, we invite you in right now, God, in the midst of our anger, frustration, where we've blown it along the way. God, we invite you in to restore, to make new, to do better, God. Jesus, we're praying right now that you would give us a vision for the days ahead and help us, Lord, here. We can't do it on our own. Jesus, we love you, and we commit this to you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen.